Hello, everybody. Welcome to this TGIF edition of Just the News, No Noise. I'm your host, Amanda Head. My co-host and Just the News editor-in-chief, John Solomon. He's out on assignment tonight. All right, everybody. The Russiagate news has exploded in recent days as newly declassified documents put the FBI and the Clinton campaign right at the center of everything, as well as billionaire George Soros. The declassified Clinton plan intelligence, according to the documents, intercepted communications from someone linked to George Soros that reportedly suggested the FBI would, quote, put more oil into the fire regarding the Clinton campaign's Russia collusion narrative. So long story short, we already knew that the intelligence community, including the FBI, knew that the Russian collusion narrative was created by the Clinton campaign, and now we know that the Clinton campaign was relying on the FBI to add credibility to their story. And it looks like the FBI under President Obama decided to do just that. They were more than happy to carry her water. So current CIA Director John Ratcliffe has stated that, quote, what the intelligence shows is that part of this was a Hillary Clinton plan, but part of it was an FBI plan to be an accelerant to that fake Steele dossier, to those fake Russia collusion claims, by pouring oil on the fire, by amplifying the lie and burying the truth of what Hillary Clinton was up to. So it's almost like the Clinton campaign was treating the FBI like they treat the mainstream media, putting a narrative out there and then allowing the media to amplify it. It worked in almost exactly the same way. It's amazing to see. But the CIA doesn't get a pass either. So remember, it was former CIA Director John Brennan who described in his own notes during a meeting with President Obama that intelligence showed approval by Hillary Clinton to vilify Donald Trump by stirring up a scandal and claiming Russian interference in the 2016 election. So he knew all of that, but still said this after President Trump took office.
We're stark and even a little bit scary in your criticism of his behavior. You said it rose to treason.
I said it was nothing short of treasonous.
In this current controversy, that specific comment has been singled out by a number of people as a comment that maybe by you crossed the line. That was maybe
Crossed what line?
Well, was it
freedom of speech?
No, I'm not saying that you don't have a right to say it, but do you stand by that consideration? And can you explain, can you elaborate what you mean by treasonous? It's a very serious allegation.
I know what the Russians did in interfering in the election. I have, I'm at 100% confidence in what they did.
In normal speech, we call that doubling down. In millennial speak, we call it tweeting through the ratio. He knew the whole time. But anyway, now Brennan is basically calling the Russiagate investigation a witch hunt filled with partisan politics. Check it out.
It's clear that there is a vindictiveness, a punitive nature to what he's trying to do with these policies and with these actions. But quite frankly, I'm not going to be intimidated because they're going to be pushing things out there that are false. And they're maintaining this false narrative about what the intelligence community did. And I like to stand up for the intelligence professionals. And that's why it's really quite unfortunate that a former director of CIA and a former director of national intelligence are at odds with the current directors of the men and women of the intelligence community who do such tremendous work to try to keep us all safe. And so it's so unfortunate that partisan politics has now seeped into the highest levels of the intelligence community.
So, of course, now that the investigation is pointing straight towards Brennan, he thinks that the intelligence community has been politicized, even though all of the evidence that we have been finding makes it seem like the intelligence community was pretty politicized already when going against President Trump back during his first term. So I think that our first guest is going to have a little bit to say about all of this and how it could have ended up happening. But before we get to that, just wanted to get you out quickly to Allentown, Pennsylvania, where moments ago President Trump landed en route to Bedminster, New Jersey. So if the president decides to speak upon getting to Bedminster, we're going to take you out to that as well. But let's go ahead and get to our first guest of the night. Joining me now, retired FBI Executive Assistant Director and the author of the book Wanted, the FBI I Once Knew, Chris Piota. Chris, great to have you here. Thanks for being here.
Hello, Amanda. Thanks for the opportunity to visit with you and your audience.
Absolutely. So I know that you know what's going on. I know you've read what has now been declassified, and you heard my big long monologue at the top. This has to make your blood boil. As someone who worked in that agency and served our country through that agency, this has got to just absolutely infuriate you.
Well, it was highly disappointing, and it was disturbing to see how certain high-ranking members of the FBI and other government agencies allowed their own personal political preferences and ideological beliefs to I guess you could say, poison the processes and practices that were in place. And looking over the information that was made public, I just think there are many questions that still have to be asked about FBI practice protocol and how those documents were found. And one last question I would ask very clearly: how many unique documents were found in those supposed burn bags that are not already logged into FBI and Department of Justice systems of record?
Yeah. I mean, still more questions than answers, it seems like. Maybe we're getting more, though. So you've got this shadowy figure over at the George Soros Open Foundation, Leonard Bernard, and then you have this Clinton advisor, Julianne Smith, and they are communicating. So this is now implicating a lot of other people. It's not just Hillary Clinton. It's not just Christopher Steele and everybody over at Fusion GPS. It's not just James Comey and James Clapper and John Brennan and Loretta Lynch. And I mean, honestly, I could rattle off 30 different names. But now we're starting to bring in even people like George Soros. The George Soros factor is interesting, though, because he almost seems to have his tentacles in everything that seeks to divide and destroy this country, doesn't he?
Well, he is a recognized globalist. He has certain ideological beliefs, and he has a lot of money and resource, and that buys you access. And unless we can shore up our cultural norms and make sure that our government agencies are operating in accordance with their assigned missions, eventually he's going to get a little more influence than he deserves or should have, no doubt.
Yeah. As I look at all of this, it is very clear, as you were saying at the top, that there were people within the FBI who were willing to lay down their duty to their country and uphold their allegiance to a political party instead. Is the FBI in the habit of, or have they ever in the past, I wouldn't necessarily think they're in the habit of it, but have they ever in the past been in the habit of furthering intelligence that they knew was created by a political campaign? Because those involved in this at the FBI and the CIA, they knew that this originated with Hillary Clinton.
Right. No, that's a recent phenomenon, again, formed by people who were unable to navigate the political and social environments. The FBI always dealt with objectivity and facts and investigative rigor. And that seems to have dropped off in the last several years in particular, where I think that people were more willing to lean in a certain direction, have an expected outcome, and then investigate to support their expected outcome. And I think that's a fatal error for an organization like the FBI.
Chris, are there too many FBI agents?
Some would think so, but I'll tell you this much. In the current threat environment, there aren't enough FBI agents. There are approximately 12 to 13,000, I think, on board right now. And when people look at that, they don't understand that. Like, New York Police Department has, I think, almost 40,000 officers for the 5 boroughs of New York, and the FBI has 13,000 agents to cover the entire world. So I think it depends on how you define the mission scope of the FBI and what level of engagement you want the FBI to have. But I think right now they are undermanned and under-resourced when it comes to addressing certain threats that face the nation.
So if we don't need to downsize the FBI, I suppose that there are replacements in order. If you had to estimate what percentage of agents who are at the FBI, and maybe, I mean, I think that under Christopher Wray, it was kind of centralized at the top, but it obviously has infected the entire agency. What percentage of the agents who have just kind of flown under the radar, they've been in the FBI since other administrations, they themselves have become politicized, what percentage of that body do you think fits into that category?
Just taking a guess of people that I know and that I worked with, I would say it's a small percentage. I would say less than maybe 5% of the agents are actually like political ideologues. Most of the agents try to keep their heads down, do what they're told, and try to do the right thing for the right reasons as much as they can. We've seen in the past 4 years that the FBI was involved in some questionable decision-making, questionable operations. And you find that that small percentage of people did occupy a good amount of high-level leadership positions, and they were able to steer the FBI into a direction that was unfavorable for the FBI as well as the American people.
Yeah. Okay, I want to ask you about your perspective of what is currently happening at the FBI. There is no doubt in my mind, from knowing Kash Patel personally, that he is a patriot, that he loves this country, that he wants to bring the FBI back to the days of its glory, to be the premier law enforcement agency in the world. I have no doubt in my mind that he wants to get it there. There are a lot of people who think that he is not very far along the road in making that happen, and maybe even going in the wrong decision or the wrong direction. If you were sitting down with with Director Patel, and you said, "Hey, I think that this is what needs to happen," do you have steps for him?
I can offer him my perception of what's going on. I think that the FBI, when left to its devices with good leadership, can do some of the great things it's doing now. If I was to offer any opinion to Director Patel, he is a strategic leader in that organization. He has to focus on the culture of the organization, which I'm not sure has changed significantly. He has to focus on the leadership environment of how they're leading their workforce and what they're leading them toward. And he has to focus on the operational practices, not the policies. He has to say, okay, this is what things are on paper, but what are we actually doing? And it's not only what are we doing, but what should we be doing? Those are the things I think him as a director has to set the tone for. And he also has to make sure that his subordinate leaders are actually executing within his intent. Those are the things I would ask him to start looking at very closely, and not focusing on the micro operations of some of the field offices. It's easy to do that because that's great stuff, but he has a different role to play.
Sure. I think that's really good wisdom. I want to ask you about a different FBI director, former director James Comey, who is all over. I mean, his fingerprints are all over what we are talking about with the Clinton-Russia collusion plan. When he was nominated to be FBI director, did you know him to be politicized or overtly partisan when he went in there? Do you think that happened during his tenure as director?
Well, I think the Director Comey held a more liberal view on certain things. And I think as he took office for the FBI director, he drifted in that direction. And I think when President Trump was elected, that really kind of pushed him in the other direction. I think he had a few what he would consider to be unfavorable interactions with President Trump, number 45, and that pushed him in a different direction.
Yeah, it's unfortunate to see. And typically the deputy FBI director is a former agent or someone who has had some type of involvement in the agency, but it's not this time. It's Dan Bongino, who also is another patriot. Do you think that he, in concert with FBI Director Patel, is that a good pairing? Do you think that they are motoring along? Is the speed picking up as far as progress that's happening?
I think a lot of people want to see faster results on certain things that are much more complex than people
feasible?
give it credit for. Sorry?
Is that feasible?
No, I don't think so. I think they have to be a little more measured in what they're doing. I think we've had some knee-jerk situations early on, and it cost them some heartache and some problems. I think Dan Bongino is a good guy. I think he means well and he intends well, but not knowing how the organization works on certain levels puts him at a disadvantage. That he's got to learn certain things very quickly, and he's got to understand how the organization works and how the organization conducts its business so that he can provide proper guidance and instruction to his people. So I know he's been on a very steep learning curve, but I think the two of them together have common operating perspectives, which is what you want to see. But the deputy director should be seen as the operations chief of the organization, not the director. And I don't know if Mr. Bongino has enough knowledge or insight yet to conduct that role as it should be conducted.
Yeah, well, it certainly seems like the situation is that they are trying to put the plane together as it's taking off. So, but you can tell from Dan Bongino's social media posts that what he has been exposed to, what he has seen, what he has pulled the curtain back on, is nothing short of devastating and pure corruption. So I guess we'll find out more at some point. Chris Piota, retired FBI executive assistant director and the author of the book Wanted, the FBI I Once Knew, an excellent read. Everybody go check it out. Chris, thanks for being here. All right, everybody, after the break, Senator Marsha Blackburn is going to be here to discuss if the Senate can confirm the rest of President Trump's nominees. There are a lot, and some important bills that she is going to introduce to counter foreign influence. That's next.
Hey folks, let's be honest, our body lets us know, right? We're not getting any younger. And if you want to look and feel your best, you need to check out our good friends at Pure Health Research. They have 45 premium health supplements designed to help with every health goal, whether it's boosting your energy, trimming belly fat, supporting healthy blood sugar, pumping your testosterone up, or even reducing swelling in your legs. Pure Health Research Supplement Store has you covered. Each formula is crafted with natural, non-GMO ingredients backed by clinical research and manufactured right here in the good old USA. And here's the best part. Pure Health Research is offering you an exclusive 35% discount. You heard me right, 35% off. Just go to purehealthresearch.com and use the coupon code JUSTNEWS at checkout. With their 365-day money-back guarantee, there's zero risk in trying something new, so why wait? Head over to purehealthresearch.com right now. Explore their 45 amazing supplements and save 35% before this deal ends with the coupon code JUSTNEWS. Don't miss this chance to feel your best.
Welcome back, everybody, to Just the News, No Noise. Over on the Senate side of things, Republicans are looking to get all of President Trump's nominees confirmed, but the August recess is looming, so can they get it done but without more delays? With us to discuss that and a lot more, like the new bills that she is dropping to counter foreign interests in America, is Tennessee Senator Marsha Blackburn. Senator, thanks so much for being here.
Good to be with you. Thank you. And yes, it's a Friday night, the 1st of August, and the U.S. Senate is in session. We are doing appropriations bills, and we are confirming President Trump's nominees.
All right, so you got 150 to go. How quickly can you get this done?
Well, the Democrats are trying to be obstructionists. President Trump is the only president in modern history who has not had cabinet members and sub-cabinet appointees confirmed by voice vote. And at this time, Joe Biden had 44 confirmed by voice vote, and Donald Trump has had none. So the Democrats have lost at the ballot box, and they've lost in the House and the Senate, and they've lost in the courts. So now they've resorted to obstruction and resistance, and they're trying to slow down the process. But you know what? We're going to keep them here and keep calling the votes and do what President Trump and do what the American people voted to see done, which is to get this country turned around. That means we need U.S. attorneys, U.S. marshals to help make the country safe and secure. We need to be certain that we are confirming appointments, our ambassadors around the globe. And then, of course, as we're doing investigations like at DOJ and FBI, you need all of these sub-cabinet positions so that we can get to work and find out exactly what happened with issues like the Russia hoax.
Exactly. Gosh, it does stink of desperation, doesn't it? Because you just rattled off all of the areas where these nominees, that these nominees will fill. And it certainly seems like this is the last stand for Democrats. Are there any parliamentary workarounds that Republicans could employ, or have you guys exhausted all of those options?
We continue to look for how we could do something with the rules change, and also considering allowing the president to do recess appointments, because our goal is to get people in place in the administration. And the pace the Democrats are working right now, it would take us months to get people confirmed. There are about 1,200 confirmations in total that need to be done. So a good review of those to see what actually needs a Senate confirmation vote and what could be approved as an en bloc group of nominees for different positions. So those are good conversations that are happening, but for the time being, It means we are on the floor, that we are working, and that we are getting the job done for the president and his administration.
Well, I got to say, you seem to be in very, very good spirits for having to stick around for 150 more nominees. But I want to ask you about these 3 bills that you're going to be introducing, a trio of bills to counter malign influence of foreign adversaries, obviously stateside, and cement some of those actions that have already been taken by the Trump administration. I want to ask you about the first bill, because this is the one that would ban the purchase of agricultural land by any foreign individuals or businesses associated with an adversarial country. I know that this, as that just stipulates, it's pretty much any country that could be deemed adversarial, but it does kind of seem like this is going to affect China the most, because it seems like China has employed this tactic more than any other country. Do you think that's true?
Oh, indeed, it is true. And we know that China has sought to buy land in proximity to our military bases and to our critical infrastructure, as well as scooping up production agriculture land so that they can actually farm on U.S. soil and then export that to China, not deal with tariffs, hold themselves above and outside of the law in that regard. So the 3 bills that I have would really block any of these adversarial nations from trying to work around our laws, and it would help protect our land so that it is going into the hands of U.S. citizens and not into these adversarial nations.
Okay, and then I want to ask you about the second bill, because this one focuses on the capital city here in Washington. So it would require the District of Columbia to end so-called sister city arrangements with adversarial nations. Now, I remember the first time I heard about sister cities, and it sounded like this wonderful arrangement where we had, kind of brotherly and sisterly love in some other city across the globe, but apparently there's something more malevolent underneath.
Yes, indeed there is. And what we have learned is that the sister city programs began with good intent, as you said. And there are many cities across the country that have them. But what we have seen is that many countries have banned cities in their countries from having a relationship with adversarial nations, China specifically. The sister city program is something that China and the Chinese Communist Party has used as a part of their soft propaganda mechanism. And because of that, we think banning Washington, D.C. from having these programs with the Chinese nations, with the CCP, with any of these adversarial nations, this is our nation's capital, and we do not want them working with an adversarial country, an adversarial city in an adversarial country.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it makes perfect sense. And the third bill, that is going to require the Department of Housing and Urban Development to work with state and local governments to assess whether and how foreign buyers, including those using shell corporations, are distorting U.S. housing markets and threatening national security. This one seems like a no-brainer, but again, I suppose that, there's a need for it.
There is a need for it. And one of the things we have learned is that you have some of these adversarial nations that enter into arrangements with different shell corporations or with certain funds, and then they establish a shell corporation. They buy property in areas that are sensitive or areas where they're wanting to gather information. Then they're the property owner. And as we know, the Chinese Communist Party and other entities are given to using spyware, malware, and using that as a part of their spy program. So this is an extra layer of protection. It allows us, when we find one of these corporations that is a shell corporation, to send that information to CFIUS, which is the Committee on Foreign Investment in the U.S., and have a proper review of that to make certain these entities are denied the ability to do business in the U.S. or to purchase property in the U.S.
It's amazing because I think I've told you before, I've lived in Los Angeles for 20 years, and you look at the swaths of real estate, both residential and business, that they've purchased up in Los Angeles. Half the city is owned by China, and we saw that in Vancouver and a whole slew of cities across this country.
Right. Yeah. You're right. And so this is a way for us to put in place protections and require these entities to undergo that CFIUS review.
Yeah. Senator, before I let you go, I think back to 2018 because I followed your campaign, and it was a flawless campaign, but you came into office in the Senate at the time when the Russia collusion narrative was at a fever pitch. And I know that you were wizened up to this early on. You knew exactly what was going on. Does it feel, do you feel some type of satisfaction as more of this information is coming out and people are learning what actually happened?
You know, Amanda, as I have looked at this and the reports from the whistleblower, the additional documentation from DNI Gabbard and Director Radcliffe, if these emails are true, and if the Soros Foundation was indeed involved in colluding with the Clinton campaign, with the Department of Justice, the CIA, the FBI, Brennan, Comey, and Clapper, then I think we have some people that are going to face some very difficult questions, some accountabilities, and will be held to account to the fullest extent of the law.
Yeah, I think that there are a lot of Americans who are really hoping and praying that happens, and I know if you have anything to do with it, it will. Senator from Tennessee, Marsha Blackburn, thanks so much for joining me tonight.
Delighted to join you. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, everybody, coming up, more proof that the teachers' unions are much more interested in fighting President Trump than fighting for your children. That story is next.
Hey, folks, if you're a homeowner like me, you need to listen to this. In today's AI and cyber world, scammers are stealing home titles, and your equity is their target. Here's how it works. Criminals forge your signature on one document, use a fake notary stamp, pay a small fee with your county, and boom, just like that, your home title has been transferred out of your name. And that's when the problems begin, because they start taking out loans using your equity and even sell your property. And you're not even going to find out it's happened until you get a collection or foreclosure notice months later. That's a nightmare, right? So when's the last time you checked on your home title? Well, if you're like me, the answer is never, right? You need to do something about that right now. That's why I've partnered with Home Title Lock, so you can find out today if you're already a victim. Use my promo code JTN at HometitleLock.com, and you'll get a free title history report and a free trial of their $1 million triple lock protection. That's 24/7 monitoring of your title, urgent alerts to any changes that might happen, and if fraud does happen, they'll spend up to $1 million to fix it. That's a good deal. Find out why I trust Home Title Lock. Go to HometitleLock.com and use the promo code JTN. That's HometitleLock.com, promo code JTN.
Welcome back, everybody. At this year's National Education Association Convention, which is put on by the nation's largest teachers union, delegates passed a series of anti-Trump measures, sparking backlash from parents and education advocates across the country, understandably. And one NEA member reportedly told colleagues that, quote, fighting Trump was more important than teaching students how to read and write. A stunning admission that reveals just how far these teachers' unions' priorities have shifted away from the actual classroom. So joining me now is the executive director of the American Principals Project, Anthony LaBruna. Anthony, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Amanda.
You know, I find so often in these scenarios, it's like, wow, they're saying the quiet part out loud. We kind of knew this all along, but it's stunning to hear them actually admit it and put it into practice.
Well, you know, it's quite sad. You know, our students have fallen in math, science, language arts, and right now they're prioritizing gender, sex, and politics. And they're not there for our students. They quite frankly are the #1 enemy of all parents. They want less control for parents in the classroom. They want more control for themselves. And this is the type of bureaucracy that Linda McMahon was put in charge of the Department of Education to get rid of. You know, these people are actively looking to dumb down our children and make a weaker America. And at this point, I believe Mark Harris and Senator Blackburn's bill to remove their charter is truly called for and is needed.
Yeah. when you look at these teachers unions, because it seems to me that for my entire life of being in politics, they've been corrupt. What is it about Donald Trump that makes it seem like they are either more corrupt or maybe they're just so threatened by him? What is it?
I don't know. I think the man himself knows how to put the pulse and really get under people's skin. President Trump has done a phenomenal job by tasking Linda McMahon to go and rid the bureaucrats that have held down our education system for so long. And right now, they're going to be losing their money scheme of having millions and millions of dollars line their pockets. And quite frankly, they probably aren't excited about that. And for the first time ever, you know, Jimmy Carter founded the Department of Education. Someone's finally holding them accountable for our slipping grades. And, you know, the fact that the average fourth grader cannot read and write at grade level, it's disappointing. So for the first time ever, you have a president who is prioritizing our children's future and education, and they're so focused on working against him, they can't even spell fascism correctly. You know, they're not in step with parents at home.
Yeah, it's really heartening. So you mentioned the flow of money that is going to dry up very soon. How much money are we talking that these unions are not going to be getting? Because I remember hearing about Randy Weingarten's salary and those at the top with her, and I nearly threw up.
For the work they're doing, it's very inflated. You know, we're talking billions and trillions of dollars, where, you know, I personally believe that when the money is spent closer to home, it's going to impact students more, right? And these guys are really bureaucrats. There are some phenomenal teachers out there in the United States. We all know one or two of them. And most of the time, they're the local neighbor. You see them at the grocery store every day. These guys are what's wrong with the education system. They're bureaucrats. They sit there in the administration. They bump up their salaries every year, letting teachers take it on the chin. And then they say, we don't have enough money to raise salaries, but they're willing to raise all the administration salaries. They're willing to spend it on these massive conferences, and they're not really caring for the teachers. So their messaging is completely wrong. They're not connected with the actual teachers back at home. And so when you're talking to your local school teachers, there's some phenomenal young ladies and men that are in that field. They never get to see that. And so it builds up resentment, and they're blaming Republicans. And I think that's why you're seeing this huge upheaval in the NEA and seeing them protest President Trump and what he's doing.
Yeah. So what I predict will happen is that when parents realize just how great school choice is, because I have a friend here in Virginia who thought that school choice was the worst thing that could happen to her 9, 7, and 4-year-old until I explained to her what it was, and she thought it was amazing, because it is. It's allowing parents to take their money with them and send their kids where they want to. What I anticipate will happen is that students will move away from public schools, especially in big liberal cities. They will move towards, you know, I don't know if it's homeschooling, but a homeschool co-op, charter schools, places like that. And then what happens to the teachers at those public schools? Because it's not like they're going to keep paying the teachers and just have smaller class sizes, because that would be way too good for the students who are still there. They're going to downsize. So where do those teachers go? Is there a mechanism that helps teachers transition from public school systems moving into some of these other options?
You know, I think it's quite sad. A lot of them are probably going to be left jobless for, you know, a year or two. Yeah. But the fact is that parents are seeking other alternatives other than public school. And I think that's a big message to teachers on the local level and then their administrations. If they want this to not happen and they want to prevent it, they're going to work harder in the classroom. They're going to get rid of the gender, the sex, and politics, and they're going to get back to the basic fundamentals that work and teach our next generation why it's so great to be an American. I think down the road, you're going to see the growth of, you know, homeschool co-ops. You're going to see the growth of Christian and Catholic high schools and private schools growing, and you're going to see teachers flock there. And I think they're going to really want to be in a system that supports them, unlike the current public school system.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that they will find a much much more supportive ecosystem surrounds them in some of these alternative forms of education. Before we let you go, I want to ask your thoughts on Gavin Newsom and Pete Buttigieg finally coming out and admitting that there are some fairness issues when it comes to men competing with women. Do you think it's only because maybe they are eyeing a 2028 run? Why now?
Of course, Gavin's been padding his resume since the day he took office. You can't trust Gavin Newsom. You can't trust anything that he has to say. It's always flip-flop here and there. Pete Buttigieg, he's not well known, to most Republicans. I mean, they know who he is. They know he was the Secretary of Transportation, but I cannot see him winning a national fight between some of these big money politicians. Hillary Clinton's going to support her, her chosen horse, and that's going to be Gavin Newsom. And it's going to be up to President Trump to ensure that we have another 4 years. His name won't be on the ticket. Potentially it could be. People are calling for another term for him. But what I'd say is that it's his responsibility as the, kingmaker of our party, the leader of our party, the commander-in-chief, is to ensure that people like Gavin Newsom and Pete Buttigieg don't get into power and don't get to control the whole entire United States and get to be the commander-in-chief. And if so, right, we're going to be in a world of hurt.
No. To be fair, I think the only reason that people knew that Pete Buttigieg had a job in the Biden administration was when he took time off from his job for paternity leave for a very extended amount of time. And that drew a lot of attention. Anthony LaBruna, Executive Director over at the American Principles Project. Thanks so much for joining me tonight.
Thanks for having me, Amanda.
Absolutely. All right, everybody, more for you coming up after this break. Welcome back, everybody. Over the past 6 months, President Trump has not only stood by his promise to the Jewish community, he has, I think, exceeded some expectations. He pledged to fight anti-Semitism, and he has done just that. And his administration pushed universities and institutions to protect Jewish students on campus, even as some turned a blind eye to harassment and hate. Trump made it very, very clear anti-Semitism will not be tolerated, not in this country anyway. But a debate has been raging in both political parties as the war against Hamas continues. Some, even in the Republican Party, are criticizing the way that Israel is conducting the war, while the president has stayed largely supportive of the Israeli government. So joining us now to talk about all of that, the Executive Vice President of the Coalition for Jewish Values, Rabbi Yaakov Minkin. And Rabbi, I'm going to bring you in and I'm going to let it rip because I know that you have something to say about what we were talking about in the last segment with regards to teachers' unions and what is actually being taught to kids in public schools in America.
Oh, yes. As I was listening to that last segment, I was just like, and I have great respect for American Principles Project and the things that they brought to your attention. But on the area of anti-Semitism in particular, they decided that they're going to teach the difference between anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism as if it were something that was easy to teach to 12th graders. I'm sorry, it's a very fine line, and you rarely see it play out in practice. The anti-Semitism is rampant. They also decided they're going to teach about the Nakba, the disaster. You see, the Arabs, certain Arabs regarded as a disaster that when the Arab League attempted genocide against the nascent state of Israel to massacre all the Jews, they fell 99% short of their genocidal goal. They only managed to kill 6,000 Israelis. So that's their Nakba, the disaster that they didn't kill all the Jews, and that's worth teaching in public schools. They also booted the ADL because the ADL, while hopelessly left-leaning, still teaches it right on anti-Semitism once in a while. And oh, by the way, they're writing Jews out of the Holocaust. Hitler killed people. Some people did something. They're not going to teach you who they killed and who they targeted because they don't want to admit that Jews can be a targeted population here after October 7. That's the NEA. Unbelievable stuff.
Yeah, it is. So with respect to President Trump's support of Israel, do you feel like he has largely kept his word and supported Israel?
Trump himself has been absolutely stunning. I mean, it's if you look at, it's not just about Israel, it's about anti-Semitism. The idea that universities, and this is another leftist idiocy, back in the 1970s, Bob Jones University lost its tax exemption because it said that there can't be interracial dating and interracial marriage. Blacks weren't allowed to marry whites. You know, if that's all the Jews were facing, happens to be that we religiously believe that Jews should marry Jews and Christians should marry Christians because it's about who, you know, how you're going to raise your kids. The color of your skin is not the factor there, by the way. And that's, you know, that's what's appalling about Bob Jones. But at the same time, at a university where a guy looking like me, you know, wearing a yarmulke is going to be picked on for who he is, the idea that that university should get research funding while Jews are being driven off campus, that sounds like something Germany would do back in the 1940s.
Yeah, it's quite absurd. And I know you would agree, Rabbi. I look around at young people on college campuses and sometimes even younger, and I don't even recognize them as being American. I want to play a clip of this podcast, young people discussing the Holocaust. Check it out.
What if the Jewish did something to the Germans that made them act a certain way, but nobody wants to talk about it? Like, the Jews don't want to take accountability. The Holocaust was the only way he can take out a huge population, like a huge amount of Jews all in one setting. But I already know what's going on. Like, I'm not dumb. Like, I know, like, the Jews did something. That's why they sent up here. They're trying to take back, like, they're trying to take back and get repercussions, especially from America, like from Americans. So they're taking over the government and stuff like that.
I'm telling you, how do we take them down?
How do we take them down?
Yeah.
I mean,
gotta kill the motherfucker.
I hate to say it.
My bad, y'all.
My bad.
So I'm just going to call this what it is, because as I watched that clip the first time, it seemed to me like a bunch of kids who were in ISS, in school suspension, who had been held back a grade, who are sitting there just vomiting their utter ignorance. Your thoughts?
Oh, you know, it's actually, it's far worse than ignorance, because this idea that it's the Jews' own fault that they were killed, that's what classic anti-Semitism has always looked like. I mean, there's nothing there in between. I mean, sorry, she is dumb, because if she were not dumb, she would have learned enough history to know not to sound like Adolf Hitler himself. I mean, that is exactly it. It's the Jews' fault. We're going to blame them for what, you know, the reason for the Jews are persecuted is because of what the Jews did. It's never about what the Jews did. It's about what the Jews are commissioned to do right, bring values into the world, share a little godliness with people. You look around at the Jewish communities, they're sharing godliness with everybody. We're not about the Jewish community alone. We're about everybody. This notion of Jewish superiority, which they also brought up, and then they skip right to how do we bring them down to show how much hatred they can display while knowing absolutely nothing about the community they target. I mean, I'm sorry to say, but that is, you know, like, if that's the state of affairs, we were right back to Germany in the 1930s. Of course, I mean, it's the same stuff.
Yeah, and I look at someone like Harvey Weinstein, who, as best as we can all tell from the allegations and from what played out in court, is an absolute monster. And yet someone like Candace Owens, who has a very large platform, pulls him onto her show and gives him a platform. What it seemed to me like she was trying to get him to say that Jews rule the world, or at least Hollywood, and he didn't end up saying that. But why on earth are we cozying up to people like that just to prove a point? Actually, I shouldn't say we. It's not me. It's definitely not me.
You know, it's all about that stereotype again. And I mean, of course, looking at Weinstein or Epstein as if they're representative of all Jews. I mean, these are Jews who learned nothing of Judaism in their lives. And they don't have the values of the Jewish people. You know, it's like this notion that all Jews are smart is an anti-Semitic trope, as I like to say, because you don't automatically learn everything there is about Jews. I mean, I wouldn't have all these books here if we weren't expected to spend our time learning how to be better at this whole Judaism thing. Weinstein, by the way, I mean, it is remarkable because Candace Owens tried to get him to throw the Jews under the bus repeatedly. And she finally says to him, but maybe they were out to get you when you had to sell your business. You had to sell it to them. And he says, well, actually, we sold it to two companies. One is owned by Qatar and the other is owned by Saudi Arabia. So she kind of had a big cell phone on that one.
Yeah. Oh, man. Rabbi Yaakov Minkin, I love having these conversations with you. Thank you so much for being here, sir.
Appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. All right, everybody. After the break, Kamala Harris explained why she won't be running for governor of California, and her explanation was pretty weak. I'll show you that after this. Welcome back, everybody. I want to get to a few things that we did not have time for earlier in the week. Firstly, former Vice President Kamala Harris, her appearance on canceled Stephen Colbert show last night.
And I am a devout public servant. I have spent my entire career in service of the people. And I thought a lot about running for governor. I love my state. I love California. I've served as elected district attorney, attorney general, and senator. But to be very candid with you, recently I made the decision that for now, I don't want to go back in the system. I think it's broken.
It's broken. Okay. So as many of you know, I went to Auburn, and everybody knows that the Auburn-Alabama game is a big game in the state of Alabama. And I am very used to comments like that. It's not that the system is broken when Alabama loses to Auburn. It's that there was cheating or that the refs were in the tank for Auburn. That is exactly, and I'm gonna really make some Crimson Tide fans out there very angry with that comment. But it's exactly what that sounds like to me. It is a weak response. I, by the way, don't think that she is out of the presidential race. She might be out of the California race, but I think that's because it's too small potatoes for her now that she's been a vice president. All right, so Kamala Harris also couldn't answer who the leader of the Democrat Party is. Check it out.
Who's leading the Democratic Party? I'm just curious.
There are lots of leaders. And
there's generally a leader of the Democratic Party. You know, like, oh, that's the leader of the Democratic Party. Who comes to mind?
I think there are a lot of, I'm not going to go through names because then I'm going to leave somebody out and then I'm going to hear about it. But let me say this. I think it is a mistake for us who want to figure out how to get out and through this and get out of it to put it on the shoulders of any one person. It's really on all of our shoulders.
To be fair, there isn't really a leader of the Democrat Party, but I want to show you this other clip where CNN shows that there really is no Democrat frontrunner for 2028.
Democrats at this point are historically divided. It is a complete and utter mess. It is messier than a hoarder's basement. What are we talking about here? The national early poll leader, 25% plus. Normally, that's where Democrats are. Biden was at 25% plus in 2020. Hillary Clinton was in 08 and 16. Gore was in 00 and 04. At this particular point, there is no one in the Democratic race for president who's polling at 25% plus. The water is quite warm. If you're a Democrat potentially thinking about running in 2028, jump right in, because at this point there is no front runner.
Listen, if you're a crazy liberal dog catcher out there, feel free to jump in the race, because I think he's right. I think the poll is wide open. All right, so here CNN is explaining why, and I have to say I don't necessarily disagree. That doesn't happen often with me and CNN. Check it out.
One of the reasons why there is no front runner, nobody wants to put anybody up at the top of their ballot list, is because at this particular point, the Democratic brand is in the basement. It is total and complete garbage in the mind of the American public. The Democratic Party's net favorable rating, record lows in all three. Wall Street Journal, 30 points underwater. CNN, 26 points underwater. Gallup, 26 points underwater. And that is being driven in large part by discontent within the Democratic base. The Democratic base wants something different.
Normally, I would say that their unfavorability ratings are just about neck and neck with Republicans, but Republicans are actually doing, relatively speaking, pretty all right now. All right, let's switch to a cultural topic, because Sydney Sweeney is all the rage in her American Eagle ads that have sparked an extreme amount of controversy and reactions. Here's the original ad. Check it out.
I'm not here to tell you to buy American Eagle jeans. And I definitely won't say that they're the most comfortable jeans I've ever worn. Or that they make your butt look amazing. Why would I need to do that? But if you said that you want to buy the jeans, I'm not going to stop you. But just so we're clear, this is not me telling you to buy American Eagle jeans.
Sydney Sweeney has great jeans.
You see what I did there, right?
Okay, so take that you just saw that just says Sydney Sweeney has great jeans, Jeans, and check out this ABC clip that they talked about this ad in it.
Genes as in DNA being passed down from her parents.
The play on words is being compared to Nazi propaganda with racial undertones.
The pun, good genes, activates troubling historical associations for this country. The American eugenics movement in its prime between like 1900 and 1940 weaponized the idea of good genes just to justify white supremacism.
American eugenics with an American Eagle ad. Golly, that's where we are now with the liberals. All right, everybody.